Welcome back to Maker Chat Live. I'm your host, Adam Krutinger, and today we have Gordon Smuder on the show. Don't miss out because we're going to be talking more about puppets. And welcome to the show, Gordon. How you doing?
Oh, gosh, I'm on.
Yes.
It's great to be here.
No, it's great to have you. I see your work all the time, and that's why I named this episode "Designing Puppets." Because one thing I love about your designs is that they're so unique. I can spot a Smuder puppet from miles away. If I'm strolling through Instagram, which make sure if you don't follow Gordon on Instagram that you do, because he is at the Puppet Forge on Instagram. But I just scroll through and I see a puppet. I was like, that's a Gordon puppet.
Awesome. I guess I never really thought about the fact that my work is that identifiable, but that's a good thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. And let me bring up some photos here so some people know that what we're talking about. These are just a couple of screen grabs that I have here from when you do. Where are you in this?
That looks like one of our local comic conventions.
Okay, so you go to a lot of Comic Cons and things like that.
Yeah.
I have another one here. You got this nice. I just got a sign similar like that for when I go to maker fairs, which I've been having a lot of fun with. But
we do a lot of comic book shows. It's kind of weird because people don't go to a comic book show thinking, "Oh, I'm going to go to a comic book show and buy a puppet." So it's a little weird. You get a lot of great reactions. One of the best ones that I ever got was this teenage girl. Kind of snide came up and was like looking at stuff and it's like why do you do puppets? I looked at her, I said, because nobody told me not to. And she got confused and walked away. Okay, cool.
No, that's so funny. Comic Cons are great, and it's so funny that you say that. Like you wouldn't expect to see puppets, and I wouldn't have the first time I went, because I went to one for the first time. I think it was like 2 years ago. One locally to here. I think it was at Niagara Falls Comic Con in Canada, right off the border.
Oh, cool.
And it was the first time I'd ever been to one, and I was amazed by the diversity. And they had some other puppet builders there.
Really?
Bill Diamond, I think it was there. And yeah, there was just such a diversity of art forms that I think puppetry fits in perfectly. And I was signed up to go again this year, but of course this year it was canceled. But
all the shows that we had booked for this year are now either postponed or canceled, and most of them postponed. Just shoved them all to the end of the year, and so we're kind of trying to figure out if we're going to go. If we're going to go, which shows are we going to go to? Because some of them are overlapping now. I don't think the situation is going to clear up enough to entice us to drive across the country and go to a comic show.
It'll be a little bit, I think, but that's why we get to do wonderful things like this. And for our people, all of our friends that are watching now, let's get into it and show them a little bit more of what you do. Do you have some things around us that you can kind of show?
Well, this is my workspace, and it's actually a room that's maybe, I don't know, 10 foot by 12 foot, because this is the only space in our house that we had that was available to, kind of set up a workspace in. That being said, my workspace in the room is probably 8 foot by 6 foot, because this wall and this wall is stacked up with bins full of fabric. And on top of those bins of fabric are like guys like, these dudes just kind of sitting there because I don't have any storage space. And what you can't see behind the camera is a couple of big bookshelves that contain not only all of my puppet books, but my collections of Star Wars figures, Playmobil, and Battlestar Galactica studio scale miniatures.
I have a lot of empathy for what you're saying. I always tell people what you see. They're like, "Oh, your shop looks so cool." You're seeing the clean angle. Okay, you don't want to see behind the camera. And Cameron Garrity can vouch for that too.
There's no clean angle.
Ideal. Yeah. Well, and I always say, I'm always suspicious of a clean workshop. As much as I admire them, I'm suspicious how much gets done there, because you can tell things are happening here. But that's awesome. Yeah, no, because go ahead.
That old puzzle. There are two barbers in a town, and one barber has a really immaculate haircut, and the other one has a really cruddy haircut. Which barber do you go to?
Yeah.
You go to the one with the cruddy haircut because, you know, he cut the other barber's hair.
Yeah, exactly. That's hysterical. No, that's a good analogy for this. But yeah, let's oh, actually, before we get into you kind of showing us some stuff,
Sure.
I wanted to show people a clip of one of your shows that I think I first kind of discovered you from, the Transylvania. Do you want to just mention quick about that so people can have an idea of what they're going to see?
Yeah, many years ago, I decided I was going to try out for the Muppets and failed. So, almost immediately after that audition, my friend Jerry Jewell, who was the head writer for the Muppets, passed away. And before that audition, he had said, "You know what? Don't think that you're going to work for the Muppets. Go do your own thing." And of course, I didn't want to hear that because nobody wants to hear that you're never going to work for the Muppets, right? So,
yeah.
After that, I kind of kicked into gear. I met some other folks who were independent filmmakers, and we got down to making a TV show with puppets. And we started with 2 of the puppets that I just kind of had in my workspace. One was a big orange monster, and the other one was kind of a nascent vampire puppet that wasn't finished yet. And we created a thing called Transylvania Television. It's all puppets. It's for grown-ups. It's not a kid show. We try to call it late night comedy, you know, because all the naughty words are beeped out, but you know, you still know what they're saying.
Yeah. No, that sounds awesome. And we're gonna give people a little taste of it right now.
Awesome.
In a spooky castle in the Carpathians lives a motley band of misfit monsters, doing their best not to kill each other as they try to run their own television station.
Here we go.
Station employees include Furry Ackermonster, the laid-back party yeti, his pal, the beatnik Batfink, the station's 60s-obsessed engineer, and his uptight boss, the vampire LeShock.
Oh, no, I'm sure I got it right.
Von Bucket is Furry's personal demon, literally. And don't forget idiot savant Dwayne Frankenstein, made from the parts of 13 people. Whether they're keeping the station's makeshift technology running or enjoying a draft at the Freaky Tiki, you'll be amazed and disturbed by the antics of the castle crew at Transylvania Television.
That is so cool. You can tell there's a lot of work that went into that from a production standpoint too, let alone the puppets.
Well, we have we started in 2007. So we have many years of actual just, you know, building up a larder of things to use and puppets. Every one of those puppets that you see there, we've used the same puppet for the last 10 years. So we've never actually changed out any of the puppets. They're all still the originals, which I'm very happy to say reflects well on the way I construct things.
Yeah. Are you still in production at all in some way?
We are constantly flirting with more episodes or more projects with the TV thing. We currently have a script that is massive. It will either end up being a motion picture length, 2-hour extravaganza, or it'll end up being 5 or 6 half-hour episodes all strung out. Basically, the monsters of TV all get involved with what's called the Dracula Spectacular. It's a cross-country car race, and Count LeShock is sponsoring a car in the car race driven by Batfink. Not only is it just the main characters of our show, which there are many. We have at least a dozen characters that we use regularly for the TV show. We're writing in, another dozen characters.
Wow. So you made the puppets and you're the creator of the show. How are you involved in production? Do you do any editing or filming or design work for it as well, besides the puppets?
I perform, and I'm Furry Ackermonster. I'm the orange guy, and that's my main character. I do a lot of the other kind of sub characters too. There was a creature that was called Gorzon the Cosmic Destroyer, and I did that character for a while until LeShock killed him. And let's see, and lots of other weird little characters along the way. We did a Halloween special, and I performed a William Shatner puppet in that Halloween
Oh,
special
that's
as well. But there's, and pretty much everybody who is a puppeteer has done multiple characters. Jeff Nepple is another one of the puppeteers that we have, and he does Robbie the zombie, he does Von Bucket the demon. He'll pick up a rat puppet every so often, and then Charles Hubble is Count LeShock, and he's a local actor. He did a lot of puppetry work for Best Buy in their internal television campus. They have the Best Buy campus here in Minneapolis. They have a closed circuit TV thing that is constantly playing programming for the employees.
Oh wow, I had no idea.
He would do what was the he's an actor, and so he would do all these weird characters with a bunch of makeup and hair and all this kind of thing. But he also would do BB the Belligerent Beagle, which of course was a complete ripoff of Triumph the Insult Comic Dog.
Oh, cool.
So he has a certain amount of puppet skills there. And then he went on to do the Choo Choo Bob Show, which is a local kids show that's all based on trains. And I built all the puppets for that too.
Oh, awesome.
Lots of
Do you have any of your puppets around you that we can see? What's that orange guy's name again?
Furry J. Ackermonster, who is, an homage name to Forrest Ackerman, who created Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine.
Oh, cool.
And was also, I believe he was a co-creator of Vampirella, I think. Actually, hold on. He's right over here. He's right over my shoulder, right there on the shelf.
Oh, let's grab him. Let's see. Let's check that out. Let's get a close-up.
Oh, come here. Von Bucket's up here, too. This shaggy bag of orange fur is Furry J. Ackermonster. And oh my gosh, what a dog's breakfast his head is.
Like that. A dog's breakfast.
All right. Hey there. Hey everybody. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey there. How you
Oh,
doing?
I didn't even notice the feathers on his chin. That's cool.
Yeah, that's the goatee.
Oh, he's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I'm kind of going bald on this side, and he's actually been modified many times. His originally, I don't know if you can see it, that darker orange patch right there underneath my chin. That's a piece that I added in to actually just give him a greater reach. Sometimes
it's funny how even though you buy the same fur, sometimes it doesn't match perfectly over time. Different runs from the mill and stuff.
Yeah,
but,
this particular fur was a gift from a friend of mine who actually worked at V Corp, which is they do all of the Sesame Street Live, or they used to do all the Sesame Street Live. They are now called V Star, I think. They're owned by Cirque du Soleil now.
Yeah.
And this furry is actually made out of misdyed honker fur, I think. So he,
oh really?
This was a unique situation where I actually got a bunch of this really gnarly orange fur. And originally he was built just as an experiment. I was making just this orange monster character. And his original name was Stoner. And that's why he's kind of like that, got the half closed eyes and the little frilly goatee and just kind of, sort of laid back. And yeah, man. Yeah. You ever look at your hand? No, I mean, really look at your hand. Yeah. So, but when we got going on doing Transylvania Television, we decided that he needed to be something different than just a monster, and to kind of give us some sort of story reason for it not being Sesame Street. Yeah. And so we decided he was a Yeti. And one of the gags that we have in the show is, "You're a Yeti." Yeah. Why are you orange? I'm albino.
Oh, that's funny.
So
I like that. Yeah, no. One thing I'm thinking, because you said he was built for the production in back in 2007, correct?
Yeah, actually, he was built before that.
Oh, before that even. So
Yeah.
this puppet's been knocking around for a long time.
Yeah.
One thing I've been meaning forever to do a video on, how and hopefully it's coming soon, though I've got a couple of things in the can first, is about how to upkeep your puppets, how to clean them, and how to maintain them. Do you have any advice on how you've been able to do that with your puppets, and particularly with the ones in Transylvania, for how long they've been around?
The first thing is dry them out, because you're always sweating inside of them. The sooner you can get them dried out, that's the best thing. Furry is really just a big sack of fabric, so I can actually turn them inside out and let them air out. The other thing is make sure you have clean hands when you're operating the puppet. Some puppeteers actually have like a spandex glove, like a fingerless spandex glove that they wear just to alleviate some of the skin oils and stuff that get on the puppet.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is
that's what I always say is, and that's how I'm going to open my video, is like 90% of maintaining a puppet is preventative.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, it's really easy when you're making a show to, somebody yells, "That's lunch," and everybody just kind of drops them on the floor and walks away, and they get stepped on, or, whatever, that kind of thing. So you have to be diligent. You have to do the job of taking care of the puppets. You also have to really come down on your puppeteers when they start trying to use it as a glove. When you see someone and they've got the puppet on their arm and they're holding the script with the mouth of the puppet, kick them in the butt, because that's wrong. You don't do that. A puppet is not a glove; it's a performance tool. You wouldn't wear your costume for the show that you're doing to the office and do your office day.
No, not at all. At least you'd hope not, for sure.
Yeah,
yeah. I wanted to talk more about some of the process with you building your puppets as well. I pulled some images from what was looks like a really fun build. You can see, what is this character here from?
Oh, that's a custom puppet that I made for a cartoonist named Jay Fosgate.
Oh, yeah, I know him. Oh,
Yeah.
He's an amazing. Actually, I want to have him on the show too real soon. I haven't asked him yet, but I'm hoping he will. But he's an amazing illustrator. One of his main books I know is the Brody Troll.
Bodie Troll,
yeah, I have that sitting over here too. What an amazing animator he is. So this is a design that he created?
Yes, that's I'm trying to remember the name of the character now. I forget. It's a dragon character that he came up with, and he's just kind of like he looks like a Hershey's Kiss. He's just kind of lumpy and kind of bottom heavy and a little pointy on top. And so he had me do that guy. I've done a couple for him. I did.
Yeah, I wanted to walk people through some of that process. I have a bunch of the process photos here. It looks like you're starting off with carving the head. Can you talk about what first of all, I want to point out, if you look in the background, you can see what looks like a to scale printed out copy of the sketch.
Yes. Jay
walk through what we're looking at.
Jay is really good at giving you information because he's a visual guy.
Yeah.
So he sends a really nice, what we call a turnaround. So it's images of the character from the front, from the side, from the back, from the opposite side. If you really ask him to, he'll give you a top and an underneath as well. But those usually aren't,
That's how you know he's an animator, because even that lingo of a turnaround is, So
it was pretty easy to get in, and I just took that image and did a scale thing. By the way, tools are incredibly important to puppeteers and puppet builders. And one of the tools that I use all the time is a proportional scale.
Oh,
I don't know if your viewers know what that is, but hold on a second. I've got one.
Bring it out. Let's see it.
A proportional scale, or a proportion wheel, is this little guy right here. Let's see if I can get that in there. So what you're looking at is a way to tell, say you have something that is 1.5 inches. Okay, you have a dimension that's 1.5 inches, and you want that dimension now to be 5 inches. Well, how do you determine what the percentage is to enlarge it by? So you get on here and you find it on, where's my number 1 here? You find it in you find your small dimension on the inner ring, and then you move it around and you match it up with the dimension on the outer ring. So let's see if we can, I don't know. It's too difficult, but I've matched up 1.5 inches to 5 inches right here on the numbers, and it's just a little turning wheel. And then you look in the magic window, and the magic window tells you the percentage that you need to enlarge your original to get it to 5 inches. In this particular case, 1.5 inches to 5 inches is 332%, something like that.
Yeah.
So this thing is it's a graphic artist's tool, but it comes in really, really handy. And that's,
yeah, especially if you save time. I usually just kind of pencil out the math, but that'll definitely save you a heap of time. I should probably even get one of those too. That's a nice handy tool.
I've never enjoyed when I do math on paper, I actually have to do math on paper.
Yeah, of course.
really in my head.
And I'm not a math person, but doing proportions and the is over of is the technique that I use. That's actually the one type of math that was really fun to me. So it has helped me out big time in the puppet building. We actually have a question here. Cassandra is asking, where do you get big styrofoam boxes like that for the head? So why don't we clear up, let people realize, because that's not styrofoam that you're using for that head. You want to talk about the materials that you're using here so people can understand?
Sure. You got that picture? There it is. That is not styrofoam. What that is called reticulated foam, or Scott foam. Some people, that's a brand name for it. And it's, if you look carefully at pictures of Gonzo the Great, this is the type of foam that they use to carve Gonzo's face out of, that little beak. It has those big holes in it, like pockmarked little holes in it. And that's a process that they do to regular, squishy foam to make it look like that and be like that. In this particular case, what you're looking at is 3 layers of probably 2-inch foam that have been laminated together so that I create a block out of it. And then looking down from the top, I've used a bandsaw to cut the top down plan view, the shape. And then I've taken that and I have drawn reference lines, so that I know where the lumpy bits of his face are. And then I've gone to the side of it and I've drawn his profile. So what I will do next is I will take that and use, in this particular case, I used a carving knife, a turkey knife, those electric things.
Oh yeah.
The ones with the 2 little blades that slide together and you use on Thanksgiving to cut the turkey.
Super handy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I used that to cut down that profile and get rid of the extra material there. And then after that, you go at it with a scissors and you trim and trim and trim and trim and trim and check to see that you're not lopsided. And then you keep trimming and then you trim even more. And then because it's going to get a fabric covering, you need to trim even more, because if you cut it to perfectly match the profile and then you put fabric on top of it, it's going to be too fat.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What? Because I'm sure I can hear people thinking this. Where do you source your foam from? That type of foam?
Boy, I have a really good resource for that. It's I look up dry fast foam, and it's not a super high quality foam, but it is readily available and it is a lot cheaper than most resources. If you look up dry fast foam online, you'll find resources for it. Most of them are upholstery places that do upholstery for boats
and outdoor furniture, right?
I
actually have a link to them on my website as well. So if you go to cruiserpuppets.com and you click supplies, I list all the supplies that I use there, and that's another way or a place where someone can find that. But yeah, no, again, I really like how this started off like that. So you cut off the top profile, then you cut out the side profile, and then it kind of jumps to the closest next picture I could find. But it looks like you did the similar process for the rest of the body, and then you have something else going on there. Why don't you talk about that?
So when I'm doing a custom like this, I have to take a look at those pictures that I've been sent and break it down into buildable shapes. And how those shapes can be turned into something hollow. You can put your hand inside and move as a puppet. Of course, most people are looking to build a moving mouth puppet because that's what the Muppets are, and so it all kind of goes around that. So it all kind of goes around the mouth, and a basic puppet like a Muppet is nothing but a fabric hinge, and then you're building around that fabric hinge. So you can see in that picture, I've kind of cut off his nose. It would be to the far right there. But that's where his head ended up, the top of his head. Then I cut out his chest and lower lip from more pieces of that foam. I had to carve them out. Then the bottom part, the bottom little snowman lump that's at the bottom there is actually, if I'm not mistaken, that's sheet foam that's been patterned up to make like a donut at the bottom. So it's several different techniques all working together to make one shape. What you're looking at fabric-wise there is he needed to be not kind of soft and squishy, and that altogether round shape wasn't exactly what he was. He also had a profile from the side that had like a long tail, and then his, the very bottom part of him was sort of oblong and not round. So in order to affect that, I created a tail out of fabric and then stuffed it with polyfill and stitched it down glued it down, I believe, to the body, and then draped all of the fabric over the top. So that's the draping process you're looking at right there. That's just a bunch of cheap fleece that I was using to figure out where the seams were going to go. And then I would remove all of that fabric and then trace it out onto the real fabric, which was
I'll bring us there in a second. I just want to hold on to this again for a moment there. So
Sure.
if I'm understanding you correctly, so you used a knit fabric to kind of create the rest of the body, because one thing that people sometimes don't realize, especially if they're newer to puppet building, is when you do that sculpture, when you sculpt foam, it can tend to be a little bit more of a stiff puppet, right?
Yep.
So if you carve that entire tail and body, you wouldn't be able to get tail movement the way you probably wanted it to be. So so that's a great technique to be able to build it up and get a smooth transition there, which turned out really nice. Then you did your patterning, and yes, you wanted to use the cheaper fabric for the patterning, because why waste the good stuff? And then we have next going into your final fleece here.
Yeah. So you can see the big lines there, the obvious seams. There's a kind of a seam that goes around his waist because I needed to separate it out at that point. There would have been a dart there no matter what, so I just kind of made it a separate piece. It might also have been that I needed to reduce the pattern pieces to sizes that fit on the fabric that I had on hand. It's all, you're reinventing the wheel every time you're making a puppet. So you just, especially on a super custom something like this. And then
here's another one I have with the arms there.
Yep, he has little stumpy arms, little tiny stubby fingers. And then his horns were separate pieces that were stitched on.
Yeah, and I can imagine some people might be wondering what made you decide to make those horns separate pieces, even though it looks like it's all like part of the body, rather than just sculpting it onto the foam skull to begin with.
Excessive detail is excessively hard to drape.
Yes.
So when you get something like that, nobody expects. You could do it. You could do it if you wanted to spend the time and energy and really, just get in there in the nitty gritty.
But even if you do it like that, like you don't necessarily gain anything other than
not really.
Yeah,
not really.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
at least with this design. Yeah.
One of the major things that I do when I'm building just regular puppets is I work in pillows. It's either pillows or pillows, cones, or string beans, and those are what I call things when I'm alone in my studio. A pillow is basically just a piece of detail like a nose or something that is two pieces of fabric stitched together and stuffed with polyfill and then attached to the front of the puppet. So let's see. No, he doesn't have it. I'm trying to see if I've got anybody who is. I don't have anybody with that sort of effect going on right now. So make a little ball, or draw a circle on the fabric. Put fabric on the backside. Stitch that circle. Put a nip in, trim it. Put a nip in it. Turn it out. Stuff it full of stuffing. Stitch that hole shut. And you have a little ball that works perfectly well to make a nose. In the case of ears are like pillows, only one side is open because you're stitching an ear shape, and then you trim it, and then you turn it out, and then you either stitch it closed or glue it on or do what you need to do.
Yeah.
So pillow stitching, I also call it a sandwich stitch.
Yeah.
I just it's two pieces of bread, put them together, stitch it shut.
That's right. Yeah. And getting into the next photo, we have some of those other elements on there, and that's part of why I wanted to bring it up, because I think maybe more so looking at this picture, people might wonder that, because like it's obvious why you would, have separate pieces for those different colors, but when it's the same color, people might still be wondering why to do that, and it is kind of a hard thing to fully explain. I think you did a great job with it too, but I think it's something that you can't really fully wrap your head around unless you're building that puppet. Yeah, unless you're building it. Yeah, but anyway, let's take another look at this here.
So his horns on his head there are cones that I stitched and stuffed and then stitched onto his head. Because fleece. The kind of fleece that we work with in generally is the kind of stuff that you can get rid of seams with by plucking them out and doing that sort of technique. There's really no point in giving yourself the headache of having to figure out the patterning of how to get those horns on the head, and just figuring out all the seaming and all that kind of stuff. Forget it. It's too much work, and you can't charge enough to actually generate that kind of work. Maybe a big TV production would pay somebody to sit there and do that kind of finicky stuff, but I don't think so, because television.
Another added benefit I might say as well, which wouldn't be particularly in this case because you did sculpt the head, but if you had a patterned head, you can take one basic, even a round head, and by using those types of features, you could make an unlimited number of designs of puppets with just by using these different, almost like, think of it like a puppet Mr. Potato Head. You're making all these different designs by doing additive features, which is a great way to work and to save time.
Well, that's part of the philosophy of our friend Pasha Romanowski. He does Project Puppet. His patterns are designed in a generic sense, so that you can go in there and you can change them around and you can do things to them and modify things, and that's really, really handy.
Yeah.
But I've discovered that the limitation of that is you have to have a pattern for a specific head shape.
Yeah.
or
True.
a specific mouth type. As a matter of fact, here's a.
But you're right. It's amazing how different you can make it look.
Yeah.
With just adding features and stuff. Because that's the same with my puppets. I always encourage people because they see like my tutorial and they some people make it the puppet exactly the same, which is fine, especially if it's their first puppet, they're practicing. But you know, I always encourage people. They're like, well, how do I make it a cat? How do I make a cat? Teach them how to make a cat. Well, use the same pattern.
Right.
Put ears on it like this, right?
Put ears and a muzzle on
But
it.
Adam, how do I make a dog? Well, use the same pattern and just make some floppy ears on it. You know, it depends on your design. You could design a different pattern for a dog,
Sure.
right? Of course. But especially when people are starting off, don't reinvent the wheel. Start off slow, pump the brakes, build up your skills.
Yeah.
But so we were just looking at this puppet or this photo, and then you were back to the finish here, which. Again, I love those eyes. It's just such a fun character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay's got a good eye and absolutely a fantastic style. He's been a buddy of mine for a while, and I've asked him to do some cartoon stuff for Transylvania Television, and he's obliged in that just as a friend.
That's amazing.
And so I'm very, very thankful for that because he's a professional. He should be charging. He should be charging me. He should be charging you. He should be charging everybody.
Yeah. Well, we are too, though, right?
Yeah.
But no, that's amazing, and he must have quite the puppet collection coming up. Because I know James Voital Jr. also has built a bunch of puppets. Who we're both friends with, built a bunch of puppets for him too every once in a while too. So he's got. I'd be interested to see his collection. He's got he's got quite a collection. I actually he contracted me to do a hanging head to go on his wall. Yes.
A while back, and it was huge. It was gigantic.
You know what? I'm so glad you mentioned that because I wanted to talk about one of those projects, and I have an example here. And if I'm lucky, maybe it was even the one that you did for him. But this is the one I have some reference photos for.
That is the one I did for him. There it is. And that was something special. He gave me a turnaround of the character he wanted, and it isn't any kind of character from his comics or anything like that. It's just something he designed up that he wanted kind of this weird monster head to hang on his wall. And so what you're looking at there is the base of it is carved insulation foam. So it's
right here. We have it here.
Yeah, that pink insulation foam that you get at the hardware store. It generally has the Pink Panther drawn on it, and that's part of the Pink Panther that we can't really show. But so this stuff glues together really easily and carves really easily and is relatively stable. So when I built that, I actually worked with the pink foam. One thing I just want to point out for people who might be thinking,
you probably wouldn't necessarily use that foam for a puppet, though, right?
Not that type of puppet.
Yeah, at least not that. Yeah, the type of puppets we've been talking about. Yeah,
there was a puppet project that I did a while back for a student film. It was like a rod puppet. It wasn't a moving mouth puppet. It didn't need to be flexible. In fact, it was better that it wasn't flexible. And it was this kind of fox-like, rabbity-looking sort of creature. And so it had to have, it had to have a torso, it had to have legs, it had to have a neck and a head. And then we were all green screened up and, manipulating it to make it, crouch and walk and look around and stuff. And then they stripped that into the final edit. But, I don't want to get too far off this, though. But, sure.
You're... this looks, even just at this point alone, it looks really impressive because a lot of the skills used to do what you did there to foam are closer to like woodworking skills. Would you say? Yeah. The way, again, sculpting foam, like that cushion foam you were talking before and that rigid foam is very different.
They're different.
I can't tell. It looks like it might have a finish on it at this point. Does it have a finish or no?
It does not. It's just been sanded. But the majority of that work that you see, the detail that I put in it there, that was all affected with just a sharp blade. And so all the ridges and things that you see were carved in with like an Olfa blade, and then I went in with sandpaper and smoothed it all down, took off the facets and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then
that's amazing. That's really impressive. The next one I have here is with some teeth and some more mouth details in there.
Okay,
And,
so this is the point where I've actually done some surfacing on it. The nose and the interior of the mouth and the teeth are all surfaced with what's called Epoxy Sculpt. And it's a 2-part epoxy putty. You can get it from Aves Studio, AVES Studio. You can order it in many multiple different sizes, but it's a 2-part putty. You knead it together, and then it starts hardening. So you work it like clay. What I do with it is I take it and I knead up a bunch of it, and then I roll it out. I take a rolling pin to it, and I make it into a thin sheet while it's still flexible and tacky. And then I take that and I layer it on top of the foam, like you would put fondant on a cake.
Oh yeah.
And then that's a really, really super easy, fast, convenient way of putting a nice hard candy coat on a piece of foam.
And for people who are wondering, another way to use it, I've done that exact same technique. If you've seen my little mechanized banana puppets, they were the same insulation foam. They carved a banana out of, just like you said, rolled out the brand that I used was Magic Sculpt.
Okay.
It's the same thing though. It's a 2-part epoxy putty. You knead it together, and then I, just like you said, the fondant like thing, and then I cut it out, and I ended up hollowing out the foam because to get the mechanisms inside.
Yep.
But obviously, this is a display piece, so you wouldn't necessarily do that. What are the teeth? Are they also the same insulation foam?
Yeah, the teeth are just carved insulation foam with a layer of the sculpty stuff on top. And just so people understand, this is not. This isn't like polymer clay. Polymer clay is something that you have to bake in order to get it to harden up. This stuff is epoxy with a lot of filler in it. So when you knead it together, you're setting off that chemical reaction, and that will harden and turn into this hard surface. If you put something like the polymer clay on top of a piece of foam and you stick it in the oven to bake it off, you're gonna ruin the foam. It's gonna collapse, and it's gonna look like heck.
Yeah.
So
and there might be some unwanted fumes there as well.
Yeah.
They're great to burn foam. But and then you end up with these. These beautiful pieces. What is that tongue? Is that fabric?
The tongue is fabric. The tongue is just another pillow.
Nice.
It's a strangely shaped, funky pillow. Here's a very interesting thing about this. His whiskers are actually porcupine quills.
Real porcupine quills?
Real porcupine quills.
Wow.
And they're not the type of porcupine that has the really sharp Barbie kind of stuff on them. These are a lot smoother than that, and they were like a dark brownish color. And in order to get them like this, I had to spray paint them. But that was
I love this character. You did such a great job with those forms, especially the sculpting of this. It has like almost like a Nickelodeon Ren and Stimpy kind of vibe to me. I love it. And not only that, I've noticed you've done. I don't have any more references of them, but I've noticed you've done a lot of these types of mounted head things before. And I've actually done some simple ones in the past, but not of the style and not as near to the scale that you've done this. What was your inspiration to start doing those?
Actually, it's it all comes from the puppet thing, because like I said earlier, you go to a comic book convention and you have puppets at the table, and the people coming in aren't there to buy a puppet really. So it's about whether or not you can convince them to make an impulse buy and buy that puppet. Here's the problem with that. Puppets ask something of you. When you pick up a puppet, it wants your performance. It wants something from you. And a lot of people are daunted by that. A lot of people, everybody thinks, I can be a comedian because I can tell a joke, or everybody thinks I sing well in the shower. but so I could probably be a singer, or I know how to dance. I could be a dancer, but they never really know if they can do it until they do it.
Yeah.
And so everybody thinks that they can be a puppeteer.
Yeah.
And everybody can, but like all of those other things, it takes time and practice and rehearsal and developing skills and all that stuff. And anybody can take and wiggle a dolly around, but to do it competently, you have to train. And that's with any physical art, any sport, any musicians. You don't just walk up to a piano and become a virtuoso.
No, yeah.
So,
and like you're saying too, like baking one cake doesn't make you a baker just because you did it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to it than just having an experience as well. It's really taking it further and cultivating it and making it an art and practicing it, like you said. Because even for things like playing an instrument, and especially with puppetry, it can't just be something that you did. It has to be something that you do. Musicians before every concert rehearse still, you know. And it's the same thing for, especially again with the type of style of puppetry that we do most often, like that monitor style. I mean, there's a big difference between doing a live puppet show and doing monitor puppetry. So
it's absolutely a different skill set. I mean, there are similarities, but talk to David Stevens from All Hands Productions. He's got both ends of that. He does live shows constantly. But he is also well trained on working on camera, and so he knows very intimately the differences. I shun doing live shows. I absolutely despise doing live shows, and there's only one reason: I hate to rehearse. So when we're doing Transylvania Television, we get the scripts and we go over the scripts, and we kind of know our lines, but we still tape them up, and underneath the camera, we can do it as many times as it takes to get it right. And then once we got it right and it's on film, we move on. So that's because I can afford to do that. That's what I have chosen to do. Lots of other people, when they're making a living at being a puppeteer, they are schlepping their show to every library and every birthday party and every park and event and community thing. And I salute every one of them for doing that work.
Oh yeah, it's just a completely different model under the same umbrella of puppetry. And that being said, I do have another clip from one of your other projects. What I believe is a commercial project that you've worked on with the lottery.
Oh, the Minnesota lottery job.
Yeah. Before we jump into it, let me just play the clip quick for people to watch.
Our lakeside chats and fireside stories.
A bag of chubs for some fish and glory. A venison steak by a big Great Lake.
Reminding a 50-inch northern pike.
That's pike, but it doesn't rhyme. Whatever.
So that's that's a lot of puppets in that little commercial there.
Yeah, that was when I was still working for Minifex, which Minifex is a special effects studio that is here in Minneapolis. That was one of the last jobs I did for them before I retired from that particular industry. But that job, first of all, it was directed. The commercial set was directed by Tim Lagasse. Who,
oh, really? Oh, cool.
We know is a great puppeteer and is also a great director. He was Crash on Crash and Bernstein, if the viewers know that show. And Tim has worked with the Muppets for years and years. He's a great guy. He's a very funny guy. And
he has a website too, timlagasse.com.
Well, there it is.
Check it out.
He directed that. He did all the layout and the storyboards and stuff, and was absolutely nothing but an amazing director. Because he is a puppeteer, because he has had that experience, he was able to understand when the puppeteers were getting tired, just by watching their performances and stuff, and would call a 5-minute break or whatever. He was there and present and willing to help with performances and that kind of stuff, for because the puppeteers on that job are puppeteers that I brought in from Transylvania Television and other puppeteers in the Twin Cities that I knew. So some of them were not as experienced as others, and we had a playback track, and it was we had pre-recorded the song, and they were playing it back, and we were puppeteering to the track, and the gentleman who was playing the beaver in the chair also built the set. So we're all hands on deck. Yeah. But he was having trouble hitting the lip sync with the track, and Tim was like, boy, do you want to take over that puppet? Do you want to get in there and get this, because we need to get the shot? And I said, just give me a second. So I went over and I talked to the puppeteer, and I said, so what are you doing under the chair here? What's your thing? She's like, I'm listening, and I'm trying to hit the words. And I said, stop listening and sing along with it. Because we were MOS at that point. We weren't recording sound, so it doesn't matter. And I said, sing along with it and let that guide your hand. Mm-hmm. And the next shot, he nailed it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's so funny too. I almost wouldn't even have thought to say that, because I feel, at least to me, it kind of comes instinctively. Like you sing along in the same way you're just singing along when you're driving in a car, listening to music. Yeah. And that's. But
he was uptight. He was, it was the only, I think the only commercial he ever performed in. So he was like kind of tense and that kind of thing. So I just said, sing along with it. Just relax and sing along with it. The words. We've heard it a million times already this morning. So just sing along with it and hit those beats. And he just nailed it. The very next shot, nailed it. So I was really happy for that.
That's amazing. That's great.
But those so for that commercial shoot, we did 2 different commercials. One was with Kent Herbeck, who was one of the Minnesota Twins. He was a retired Minnesota Twins guy. And then the other one was, I'm drawing a blank, another Minnesota Twins guy. And so we had 2 days of shooting. For that commercial, I generated 16 new puppets. I designed and built all of their little instruments, their little, the cigar box guitar and candy container guitar, and the little jug that the guy was blowing into, and that kind of stuff. And then I designed the set, and then I designed and built the miniature for the establishing shot at the beginning of the commercial, which was a landscape with forest and a lake and a little cabin and all that kind of stuff. And so that was a really, really intense 6 weeks.
Yeah.
My wife didn't see me for 6 weeks.
I totally understand.
I would go to Minifex during the day. I would build the instruments and the miniature set during the day, and then I would come home at night and work in the living room, building all the puppets, because we needed a skunk and a set of squirrels and a set of birds and a bear and a deer and a northern pike on the wall, and the gopher and the fox and the loon, and so it was really intense. And special thanks to Pasha Romanowski for all of his patterns, because my God, they saved my butt. He's amazing. He does great work. And we actually have a comment here too from our friend Noel McNeil. Hey, Gordon, Brad says hi. And bow down. So Brad is the puppet that I sent to Noel. You don't know, of course, Noel McNeil, Bear in the Big Blue House, tons of amazing Sesame Street. He just launched his new podcast, Noel's Book Nook. So make sure you check that out as well. Amazing puppeteer, awesome guy, and is always coming up with new stuff. His Show Me Show on Patreon. Tons of stuff like that. And you just did a build for him, which leads me to something I want to, in closing, bring up, is a lot of the puppets that you build for commission and have available to people as well. One thing I'm going to bring up right now is, of course, your Etsy store. Yes.
Where people can You have puppets available there.
Yep.
You have some supplies for people, some vacuum formed eyes I see, and these are. I mean, it looks like you have a different price points. Some of them would be maybe for presents for people or their starter puppet, and then some other level puppets up here at a different price point.
Yeah.
Want to talk a little bit about that quick?
Yeah. So the smaller guys, if you scroll down a little bit, like these guys down here, those guys in the middle that are in the $65 range. When I make those puppets, they are made off of kind of standard patterns that I have, and I make 6 of them at a time. So that little purple guy on the right, that guy, I made 6 of him because that's the Henry Ford process that I use. It's the kind of space that I have in my studio. It's the limit of my patience.
6 of the exact same looking character?
6 of the exact same guy. So I cut 6 sets of parts. I sew 6 sets of parts. I assemble 6 sets of parts and make 6 puppets. Because that allows me to put them at a $65 price point on Etsy. The other guys, the guys towards the top, are they are also from standard patterns, but they are one of a kind. And so in order to defray the time cost of putting those together, they are a lot more. And also they are specially made. So many of them have armatured hands. So their fingers have wires inside, so you can pose them. They have a lined interior muzzle, so that when you put your hand in there, you're touching a nice fabric surface as opposed to like a raw foam.
Yeah.
They have arm rods, steel arm rods that I use, and so they get a little bit more love and care and a little bit more design thinking than some of these other guys.
Those are one out of a kind too, and there's a lot more value in that. Especially if someone's going to be doing a show or something with it. It's comforting to know that there's not another one with another YouTube channel somewhere or something like that. But also you do commission work for people as well. Yeah,
actually, if you go to that pink monster that was right there, that guy. If you scroll down just a little bit, that's what he looked like before surgery. He was one of the ones that I had built for just selling on Etsy. And I got contacted by this gentleman, and he said, "So, is it possible to get that puppet with 3 eyes?" And I said, "Well, if you pay me a little extra, I can modify him and give him an extra eye." And so he was like, "Absolutely, that's what I want." So that's what he did. He paid me extra money, and I literally carved out part of the face and restitched in a new piece of fabric and put on brand new eyes so that he had a triple ocular sort of situation going on.
Great. That's hysterical.
And the gentleman was so happy with this puppet that he immediately ordered a brand new custom puppet.
Oh, nice.
So, and he has several more that he wants me to make as well. So I'm developing
for people that are wondering too, a custom puppet isn't at any of these price points either, right? That's another, it's all based on the design, and that's something that is probably custom, what's the word for it? Calculated for each client depending on their needs.
That's exactly it. Like I say, you're reinventing the wheel every time you make a new puppet. So you've got people have to come in with a design, or you help them design something. They tell you what they want. They tell you what they want the puppet to do, and they give you like the colors and the general outlay, and then either they give you a design drawing, or you just generate a design drawing for them, which you should charge them for.
Yes. Yeah.
And design is work as well. Design is work.
Absolutely.
And it shouldn't come for free. So, you get that out of the way. And once you have that design nailed down and you've answered all the questions, that's when you look at it and you break it down into tasks. How long are these tasks going to take you?
Yeah.
And how much are you charging for your time to do those tasks?
Yeah. And just because I know a lot of people who are watching this are also people who are learning to do a similar thing with their business, whether it's puppetry or not, whatever type of maker they are. How do you personally go about calculating those numbers? How, and I did a whole video of this on YouTube too. If you type in Krutinger puppet cost or Krutinger cost, you'll see my full kind of breakdown of my process. But I was curious. I always like to get other people's opinion on that too, because it can be very personal depending on what you value in your process.
Only you can determine the value of your time.
Yeah,
and that's it. If you are doing a passion project, if you are making puppets for your church, or if you are making puppets for a charity auction or something like that, that's up to you to determine how much you are going to discount the time that you put in. But you should be looking very carefully. You should be researching. You should be finding out what other comparable puppet builders are charging for their time. Mm-hmm. And you shouldn't be afraid to ask about it. In the world that we live in, we all need to work together. There is competition, but it should always be friendly competition. And find out what other people are doing, and you're only really helping them when you price yourself in a comparable way. And the reason why is because so someone goes to them and says, "Can you build me this puppet?" And they say, "Yes, it will be X number of dollars." And that person doesn't want to pay X number of dollars. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to go research and find other puppet builders. And they're going to find you. And then they're going to ask you, "Can you build me this?" And you'll say, "Well, that looks just like so-and-so's work. Why don't you just have them build it?" And they'll say, "Well, they were too expensive. I want somebody cheaper."
Yeah.
Number one, that's an insult to you.
Yeah.
And number two, that's an insult to them.
Yeah. You want cheap puppets, maybe make them yourself. They still won't be that cheap, but
one of my favorite replies is, "Well, I hear they have a really excellent custom puppet aisle at Walmart."
You
could go.
If you're considering that, you're talking to the wrong person.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So it's if you know how your competition is pricing, then you can price yourself in the same fashion, and that way there is an equity in that market.
Yeah. And also just know a big thing that I talked about in the other video too was knowing your value too, and being honest with yourself of where you are in your career. If you are more of a beginner, and even compare your work to someone else's. If you do share prices with another artist, then also compare your work too. Because if yours is at you feel a slightly higher level, maybe you should be higher. Lower, maybe you should be lower. And honestly, one more thing too, because it's one thing to charge people for your time, but that's one thing I also talk about too. Not everyone's time is the same value. Not even because of their skill level, Like if I spend 2 hours sewing and someone else spends 3 hours sewing, is that because they're doing better work and putting more time into it, or is it just because they're still learning sewing?
Right.
More time doesn't necessarily mean a better quality. So those are things to think about for people who are trying to price themselves. And I really recommend looking at that other video that I did as well. It's really in depth. But before we start to wrap out, we send people to your Insta. Down along the bottom has been scrolling all the different places to find Gordon. The Puppet Forge, at the Puppet Forge on Instagram, on Facebook as well. Check out Etsy.com/Puppet Forge. And Transylvania TV as well. Gordon, before we wrap up, is there any advice you might give to people who want to get into making puppets?
2 things.
Don't do it is the first one right now. Just kidding.
One is don't be precious about the work.
Yeah.
The work is the work. You get online and you see all these people that are making their own puppets, and they're hand stitching everything. They're getting there. There's really, it's all about the art and the thing. It's like, if you want to be a business, be a business. If you want to be an artist for yourself, then be an artist for yourself. But the two are not the same.
Yeah.
So when someone hires you to build a puppet, you have to take a professional tack at it, and you have to just accept that this is the job, and you're going to do that job, and you don't get the luxury of being kind of, oh, I don't really feel like this today. So you don't be precious about the work. If it's work, it's work. The other thing is, don't get into this business.
Yeah.
that's always run as fast as you can in the opposite direction. Get a real estate license or something. Because
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's nice to have. I have a day job myself. Guilty, So I definitely recommend that.
I am lucky that I do not have a day job other than this. Yeah, and I.
Depends on how you think of luck.
I am absolutely willing to admit that I am supported by a lovely woman who works for the University of Minnesota, and while I contribute to our household, I do not support our household.
Yeah.
So it's very important that I have.
Well, it's nice to marry someone who has health insurance as well, too, right?
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and before we close out, one more thing I want to let people know about. If you notice me drinking out of this awesome mug here from the National Puppet Slamdemic, make sure you get your own too from puppeteers.org/relief, and I believe a lot of the proceeds go to the Direct Relief Fund for puppet artists. They're doing a relief fund because of the pandemic. So many people can't do their puppet shows like we were talking about earlier. So what they've set up is a grant program that puppet artists can apply to and get a grant from Puppeteers of America. So you can donate to that at puppeteers.org/relief, and you can support it by donating, or you can also order one of these awesome mugs, which I am just absolutely loving.
I gotta order one of those mugs now.
You got to order one right now. Another thing, every single drink that you pour in here automatically tastes even better, knowing that you're supporting other puppet artists.
I'm drinking out of my Francoma antique mug that is very, very, very much like Star Wars Land at Disney now. It's just kind of Art Deco, but
cool. Awesome. Well, Gordon, it's been wonderful to have you on the show. I hope a lot of people enjoyed this, checking out your work, got a lot of great advice, and we will see everyone else in our next episode. Bye, guys.